Well,
don't even say anymore. Just start with the comment right there. Ebbs and flow, right there. Perfect. Couldn't be more accurate with what you're wearing.
What do you mean? I'm not looking for it. I'm wearing my. This is. Oh, you think this is orange? This is red. Okay. Well, Al, that's an awkward intro. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Did we just have the game of the year to start week 16? Seattle winning 38-37, walking off on a 2-point conversion. We got 8 games to talk about today, including Houston and Las Vegas, which we didn't get to yesterday, but also Chicago at Green Bay was the best wide receiver in that game. Philadelphia at Washington. Is Terry McLaurin going to get shadowed and shut down? The Chargers are at the Cowboys. Good offense in this game. Good defense in this game. What do we expect? Minnesota at the Giants. Really interesting fantasy game. Tampa Bay at Carolina. Really interesting fantasy game. Atlanta at Arizona. That, to me, has this question of Drake London is back. If Marvin Harrison Jr. is back, can we trust the guys who have been two of the very best at their position, Kyle Pitts and Michael Wilson, and the Jets are at the Saints? Okay, enough rambling from me. Seattle 38, Rams 37. Holy moly, Dave, what an awesome game this was. Fantasy takeaways.
The kickers were pretty good.
Okay, yeah. Look, Matthew Stafford scored 36.9 points. Puka Nacua had the best game of his career. What else stood out?
I mean, the first thing that stands out is there's a reason why I don't really break down weather forecasts until an hour before kickoff, because everybody was going cuckoo over crazy high winds and lots of rain and bad weather, and people were freaking out about what it would mean for this game. And all you have to do in this wonderful age of social media is go on your favorite platform and search for videos that human beings take from these places that might show the weather. And the weather did not look bad at all. And that actually encouraged me to start a lot of players in this game. And so the very first takeaway, it's a very simple one. It's just not to overrate weather until it looks absolutely clear, pun intended, that it's going to impact the players in your game. So that's just the first little thing. The second thing is throw out every single stat, everything you know about football when you preview a game, because none of it matters, because anything can happen in any single week. Kenneth Walker, who was dead to the world, suddenly looks like the best running back in football. Colby Parkinson, who looked like the best tight end in the red zone in football, turned into an absolute pumpkin. And the players that you know that are studs, they turned out being really good and really helping you out for the most part in this game. So I don't think you should really complain that much about how things went, but it does suck when you start Colby Parkinson, he doesn't come through. You bench Kenneth Walker for Kenny Gainwell or something like that, and boy, you know that's going to hurt come Monday when the games are over.
Yeah, I don't really think there's any way to have forecasted this kind of game from Ken Walker. 11 carries, 100 yards and a touchdown, 3 catches for 64 yards, 25.4 fantasy points against one of the best run defenses in the NFL.
They were unbelievable. Like their explosive rate coming into the game was under 5%. That's really good. That means that less than 1 out of every 20 runs they see goes for 12 plus yards. They were really, really good. And Walker still had the exact same role. Like at some point, the coaches had to turn themselves and said, why aren't we using this guy more? Charbonnet led the way in snaps. He still did his thing on third downs and near the goal line. It's crazy that they did not play the hot hand. They're absolutely committed to using Walker and Charbonnet the way they have pretty much all year long. And it's kind of gross.
All right, Jamie, Colby Parkinson, if he had just caught his 2 drops, we're looking at probably about 7.5 PPR fantasy points, which is not good, but I could live with it. But the 2 drops really hurt him, and Parkinson ends up with 3 points, 2 catches for 21 yards on 4 targets for 4.1 fantasy points. But yeah, I mean, this really sucked. And I don't know, what can we say? I started him in 3 of 5 leagues. I recommended him a lot. So if you started him, I'm in the same boat as you, and I'm sorry. Yep. What do you say?
I mean, there's nothing to apologize for. The matchup was great. He had a great role. This is what happens, when it's not somebody that's been putting up consistent numbers, aside from the touchdowns for him, and the touchdown went to another tight end. Like, this just happens, unfortunately. I started him in several leagues myself. So you have to deal with it. And like you said, Dave, people that bench Kenneth Walker and watching that performance are probably pissed off, and people that made the decision to sit Matthew Stafford because of weather concerns in the matchup are obviously pissed off. That this is just the nature of a football game, that things happen. So there's no reason to apologize. It just sucks. That's the only way to approach it. And you mentioned the kickers. Jason Myers had been the best kicker in fantasy, and then he
I know.
a game where they score 38 points and he gets 2. So it's you're going to be on one side of it one way or the other. You're facing Puka Nacua, or you had Puka Nacua. You're facing JSN, or you had JSN. You face Stafford, you had Stafford. So it's just you hope that we get a lot of games like this. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see the way the Seattle rebounded. Give Sam Darnold credit. He looked miserable for basically 3/4 of that game, and then the final drive in overtime, he looks 1,000 times better. So I think for anybody that advances, you'll have to make some tough calls when it comes to Ken Walker against a great matchup against Carolina. I'm sure we'll be moderately excited about him, but like you said, Dave, the role didn't change. So he had a couple of big plays, lost another goal line opportunity. So Charbonnet scores a touchdown. In the case of Parkinson, we're probably done with him. Especially if Devontae Adams plays next week. And so it's just, you advance. You're starting Kyron still as a number 2 running back. You're starting Puka. You're starting Stafford, and just hopefully we get a better game from Kyron. Really, that's the only one.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is that Kyron finally had the best role of the last 2.5 months, basically 23 carries and 3 catches on 6 targets, and he comes away with a bad game. So you can't, disappointing game, 11.5 PPR fantasy points. I think as far as Parkinson goes, I'll just speak like I think I'm sorry if I recommend him, whatever, but I think
why are you apologizing?
Well, it's an empathetic apology, right? Like I get it. I understand you're upset, and I am too. It's a bad way to start your week. The best we can do is just lay out the reasons for why we liked him. The reasons were all there.
It's process over results. We can only say what we see and how we break this down. Like we can't control that they didn't throw the ball to him more. We can't totally drop 2 passes. Like the matchup was great. The opportunity was great.
Yeah, but I was worried about another tight end having a big game. Like I was concerned about that. But all right, whatever. Okay. And that is arguably the best game of the year. I think people were saying Bills Ravens week 1 was also fantastic. It was. I'm sure we're forgetting some. Cowboys played a couple of fun overtime games, but this was really exciting. Super, super great finish there. And the 2-point conversion, the fumble recovery was one of the wildest plays you're going to see. All right. Sunday morning, please join us.
Really, the 1 seed in the NFC could be decided because Zach Charbonnet decided to pick up a ball that was on the ground.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, both the Seahawks and the 49ers control their own destiny to win the NFC, to have the number 1 seed in the NFC. If either of those teams wins out, they will be the 1 seed. Okay, news and notes. Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern. You know where to go. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today, live until kickoff, answering your questions. Anthony Richardson has 21 days to be activated, so they opened up his practice window. He's not going to start this week. We'll see what happens next week, but just that'd be weird if we were starting him in the fantasy championship. Geno Smith, I think we expect to start at Houston. Okay, running back news. RJ Harvey's been practicing, but Sean Payton says he needs to get Jaleel McLaughlin more involved. Sean Payton says stuff like that a lot. Hopefully doesn't happen at the expense of Harvey. Javonte Williams still limited. Devin Neal's been ruled out. Alvin Kamara has been missing practice, so it looks like Estime and Hull right now. DeAndre Swift is questionable. I do think we keep an eye on it. He's got a groin injury. We'll talk about that game soon, but we have him ranked. Woody Marks still missing practice. You guys still have Marks ranked, right, Dave?
We do.
Yeah, and we'll hope he's got to get out there today, and we'll keep you updated on the mailbag. Hopefully we'll find out. Nick Chubb has been practicing in full. So we'll talk about that game shortly. Josh Jacobs missed practice. This is the big one here. And Emmanuel Wilson is obviously someone that needs to be rostered. And let's see, at wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. was limited again. Drake London limited again. Christian Watson might be a game time decision. Another game we'll talk about soon. So I think they're going to have Watson and Jaden Reed and pretty much everyone in the receiving core. Rashee Rice still in the concussion protocol, and Tyquan Thornton. T. Higgins still in the concussion protocol. He basically didn't practice yesterday, and then he showed up with his helmet late in the practice. CeeDee Lamb has an illness. Tetairoa McMillan practiced in full. That's good. Pat Bryant in full. Quentin Johnston's been practicing. The Bears ruled out Odunze and Luther Burden. So we'll talk about DJ Moore shortly. Devon Vele is out, and Ricky Pearsall has not been ruled out yet. He did miss practice to start the week for them. They have a Monday night game, but Pearsall has not been ruled out. We're not expecting Njoku. Dalton Kincaid has missed 2 practices, so he may not play. Cade Otton was limited, and Mason Taylor has been ruled out. And the Steelers could be without 2 starting offensive linemen. The Panthers could be without their left tackle for their big game against the Bucs. The Packers could be without their right tackle for this big game at the Bears. The Vikings got a good injury report yesterday on their offensive line. It seems like Christian Darrisaw is unlikely to play, but the 2 other injured players, they were limited. And the Eagles also, they're not going to have Lane Johnson, but it looks like they'll have Fred Johnson and Landon Dickerson. Okay, on defense, looks like TJ Watt is out this week. Quinnen Williams, this is the biggest one, I think. He practiced. Quinnen Williams for the Cowboys is in the concussion protocol. Since acquiring him, the Cowboys allow 3.9 yards per carry to running backs and the second fewest rushing yards per game to running backs. Before getting Quinnen Williams, they allowed 4.9 yards per carry and the 7th most rushing yards to running backs. There are probably other factors too, but it's huge for the Chargers running backs here. And I will stop it there. The Patriots still a little injured. Like Christian Ellis, it looks like he's going to play, but they have 2 linebackers and 1 cornerback who have missed both practices to start the week. So the Patriots DST might be limping into the game at Baltimore. All right, let's go right into one question for each game. Chicago's at Green Bay. Dave, who's the best wide receiver in this game?
As of now, it's DJ Moore. If Christian Watson ends up playing, it could very well be Christian Watson. I feel like this offense changed last week when Christian Watson got hurt. It would be cool to see him play, and I'm starting to warm up to Jordan Love in this spot. It's a big-time matchup, obviously, for the division. Bears pass rush isn't that great. These are usually the moments when Jordan Love can put together a good game.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I feel like you guys are a little low on Love, but then you look at the rankings, and it's a good week for quarterbacks. So,
I agree.
Yeah. He's 15th or 16th or something like that, but I think it's probably a good 15 or 16 there. Philadelphia at Washington. Jamie, starter sit Terry McLaurin. 2 good games in a row, but he had only 4 targets last week. You maybe worry about him getting shadowed by Mitchell. Starter sit McLaurin.
I think, as we said about some receivers this week, given the nature of the position, like, it's very difficult to bench somebody like McLaurin and what his upside is. And, you go back to a couple of games this season with Mariota, scored against Denver, big game, scored against the Chiefs, solid game. I don't want to say he's matchup proof because he's proven that throughout his career, but or hasn't proven that throughout his career, but he's, I think, still got to be in your lineup, certainly in 3 receiver leagues and probably in 2 receiver leagues as well. So he's still a top 24 receiver, but basically after like wide receiver 17, 18, 19 for me in that range, like, I don't really love a lot of guys after that. So that kind of tells you about the week. And he's, right around wide receiver 20.
He's had at least 14 PPR points, 2 of his past 3 and 4 of his past 5. But I'm really looking at his time with Cliff Kingsbury. 2 of his past 3 against Philadelphia. The one time he didn't, he only had 2 targets in the game. It was week 11 last year.
I said 2 in a row, didn't I? It's 2 of the last 3 have been good. He had that terrible game at Minnesota. Forgot about that. Chargers are at the Cowboys. Okay, so back to these wide receivers. Can you trust Ladd McConkey or George Pickens, Dave?
You're going to start Pickens. I know it's been ugly, but there's no evidence that he's going to continue to slack on the field. And you can't help but recognize what his upside is and what the upside is for the Cowboys overall. It's a tough matchup, but you're still going to start George Pickens. If you want to lower expectations, that's probably a smart thing to do. Not a top 10 wide receiver. I would be much more excited about McConkey if Quinnen Williams does not play, because the pass rush will be muted. It'll give Justin Herbert just a little bit more time. Obviously, the matchup is phenomenal. I'm okay with him as a low-end number 2 wide receiver this week, assuming he's going to lead the team in targets. You do also have to watch out for Quentin Johnston, and if he plays, that's a double-edged sword. It's good because he can take the top off of defense. It can open things up underneath for McConkey, but it's also somebody else who can get some targets and take some work away from McConkey. That's why he's not like a top 20 wide receiver for me. He's just outside of that.
Okay, we're going to get to the Minnesota and New York Giants game in 1 second. We got to take a quick break on Fantasy Football Today. Back with one question for each game after this.
This is European soccer's biggest stage.
Written in the stars.
What a difference she has made.
The question is, can you handle it? The crowd here feels electric. Stream every match of the UEFA Women's Champions League on Paramount Plus.
Jamie, Minnesota's at the Giants. Rank the running backs in this game, and then rank the wide receivers in this game.
Tyrone Tracy, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, Devin Singletary, Wandell Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Darius Slayton.
I love when we have the offense we don't necessarily want to trust against the bad defense, and then the offense that we usually do trust, at least some of the guys, against the great defense. It makes things interesting. All right, Tampa Bay at Carolina. Dave, Rico Dowdle has been struggling lately. Did score, I think, a pretty impressive touchdown last week. Starter sit Rico Dowdle against the Bucs.
Gonna roll with him. Again, a number 2 type player, not a number 1 guy. Number 2 running back should lead the way for Carolina in terms of touches. And this Tampa Bay run defense, I know they're getting a little bit healthier just overall on defense, and getting Dennis, one of their linebackers, back will help. I'm still going to figure that the Panthers are going to run the ball or try and run the ball a lot. And Dowdle hopefully has some better efficiency than he did last week.
All right, Jamie, I think we'll spend a little more time on this because this is one of this is the second to last game we're going to preview. And I think it's, arguably the biggest question of the week is, what do you do with Kyle Pitts and what do you do with Michael Wilson, which is super easy if Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't play and or Drake London doesn't play. But if those guys are back, how are you going to value Pitts and Wilson?
I think Pitts, you're probably still starting. You look at the position, you look at what's, I'm sure, available on waivers. So you might be still seeing Darren Waller out there in some leagues. You might still see Colston Loveland out there in some leagues. Maybe Goddard or Strange or Johnson, all those guys that have been in and out of fantasy lineups and have been productive at times this season. I'm going to hope that what Kyle Pitts has done with Kirk Cousins still carries a lot of weight, and just don't expect the 100 plus yards and 3 touchdowns type of game, but still probably 6 to 8 targets and an opportunity to find the end zone. It's a great matchup, so the Cardinals have been bad against tight ends for the majority of the season. So I think that gives you a little bit more confidence to trust him and hope that he can have a good enough game, if not still great game. Wilson is a little bit tougher to trust, clearly, so what we've seen from him in the games with Jacoby Brissett and Marvin Harrison healthy, it's been what most of Michael Wilson's career has been, which is, you're hoping for a big play. You're hoping for a touchdown. You're just not seeing the targets. You're certainly not seeing the type of targets or the volume of targets that he had when Harrison was out. Which version of Harrison are we getting? Which version of Wilson has now, sort of emerged? Obviously, there is one alpha in this offense from a passing game perspective, and that's Trey McBride. He's not going away. So I don't think that necessarily helps Wilson's cause. I think you just have to treat him as a starter in 3 receiver leagues. And if you're really stuck at wide receiver and he's been somebody that you just have been a must-start guy, then maybe you still start him, because, again, there's about 19 receivers that feel safe. And that number might be less, when you bring up Pickens and McConkey and some of these guys that have great matchups but have not played well. Or in the case of Pickens, has played well but doesn't have a great matchup. I just think for me, I have Wilson in about 8 leagues. I'm probably still starting him in about 4 of them.
Right. Yeah. So for Wilson, what you should know is that over the last 8 games for the Falcons, they've allowed 12 or more PPR fantasy points to 12 wide receivers. So that's 1.5 per game. It is a great matchup for him. I hope the Falcons can score and, keep this. We're hoping this is a high scoring game. For Pitts, there have been a handful of tight ends against the Cardinals. 4 tight ends have scored 12.2 or more PPR fantasy points with 6 or fewer targets. The problem is 3 of those 4 have scored at least 1 touchdown. And Kyle Pitts had 1 touchdown all season before he scored 3 last year. Going into last week, Pitts only had 1 end zone target, and he had 2 last week. He had 4 red zone targets. He had 3 last week. So his typical role is just, between the 20s, basically. It's just like he doesn't get the red zone. Maybe that changes now, but he doesn't really score touchdowns, is what I'm trying to say. You got to hope that changes after last week's outburst. Dave, here's a question in the chat. I have Michael Wilson, Cortland Sutton, and Quinshon Judkins. If Harrison plays, Aaron is saying he's not going to start Wilson. Certainly, we're not going to start him over Sutton, but over Judkins, who would you start? Judkins
What's
or
the
Wilson?
format?
Yeah, that's a big question. So give me in all three formats. Give me.
Yeah, I think Aaron typically plays in PPR. I've talked to him before, and if it's PPR, I think I would still go with Wilson over Judkins. And if it's not PPR, I think it's going to be really close. Maybe I flip it to Judkins there, hoping that he breaks a couple of decent runs against the suspect Bills defense.
All right. Okay. And then our last game is Jets at Saints. Dave, starter sit Breece Hall.
Boy, he stunk, but so does the Saints' run defense. They've allowed 10 running backs to get just under 15. Let's call it 14.7 or more PPR points this year. 3 of them since week 10. That includes Bucky back in week 14. I don't know if I can find 24 other running backs that I like better than Breece Hall.
Yeah, but it's not a very confident start.
It's not. Like you mentioned Rico Dowdle earlier, easily starting Rico ahead of Breece Hall.
Michael Wilson, if Harrison plays, or Breece Hall?
Probably go Breece.
Jamie?
I don't know if Breece is the best running back in this game based on the matchup.
Are you starting Audric Estime over Breece Hall?
I'm considering it. I mean, they're very close right now in my rankings, and you're looking at the matchup. I think if we had some clarity on Estime being the guy, then I would do it. Because there's uncertainty between Estime and Evan Hull and who's going to get more work, there's some doubt. But I mean, Hall, like you said, Adam, he's been struggling. And yes, the Saints run defense has not been the most formidable opponent, but the Jets offense with Brady Cook has not looked great. And so wouldn't shock me if Estime is better, because how often have the Saints been favored? They're favored in this game. This run defense for the Jets has been absolutely atrocious since they got rid of Quinnen Williams. Like, this could be a great game for Estime and a so-so game for Breece Hall. So it wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right. Well, it's going to be time for football in New Orleans, as they've got a little bit of momentum down there in New Orleans. They're playing all right. Their defense is playing all right. But it's also time for football with BetMGM. Register with BetMGM to get instant access to the best variety of parlay selection features, no sweat and boost tokens, live betting options, and much more. New players can receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets with the bonus code FANTASY if they don't win their first bet. You don't want to miss out on any of the hard-hitting action at BetMGM. Place your money line, parlay bets, and more today. BetMGM, make it legendary. Raiders are at the Texans. So it has been as bad as it gets for the Texans. Their last 3 games, they've run 46, 48, and 42 plays. Their last 2 games, they've had the ball for about 21 minutes. So it's made a bad offense look.
The Raiders.
What'd I say? The Ravens?
You said the Texans.
You said Texans.
My bad.
Maybe you meant the Texans. I was asking.
No, the Raiders. You're right.
Yeah, they stink.
All right. So listen, Genty and Bowers. Jamie, where you at on these guys?
I'm still starting Bowers. I know it's been clearly tough for him in a lot of ways this season. But, I mean, look, Trey McBride just had a great game against this defense. Hopefully Bowers can follow suit. Getting Geno back is to me, a positive. So still a top 10 tight end, just not in the top 3 like he's been ranked for the majority of the season. Genty, I would like to get away from. So again, similar to Breece Hall, I have right now Estime and Genty back to back. Any sort of clarity on the Saints running back situation, that's an easy switch for me. Genty, 3 straight games, 35 rushing yards or less. Last time he scored a touchdown was week 10 on a reception. This is just not a great offensive environment for him. This is a tough defense. As we know, they're number 7 in fewest fantasy points allowed to opposing running backs. So if you can sit Genty, that's the way I would do it. But clearly there's hope that he's going to have a role in the passing game with Geno back. Hope that he can find the end zone. Hope. It's just been bad sledding for him the last, several games.
Bowers is top 7 for everybody, top 5 for Jamie and Dave. And then CJ Stroud is 50. CJ Stroud or Jordan Love? Like we said, we like Jordan Love. We don't love him. Who do you like better, Stroud or Love?
Right now, Stroud. I may make that switch if Watson's cleared to play. It's really, to me, it's dependent on Watson. If Watson's out, then I don't want to trust Jordan Love. If Watson plays, I'll have a little bit more faith in him.
Okay.
Fair.
The Raiders are 19th against quarterbacks. They got carved up last week, though, by Jalen Hurts. They haven't really, the Raiders' defense hasn't really been that bad necessarily this year for fantasy purposes, but man, last week was ugly. All right, so this is a tough one, Dave. How do we feel about the running backs for Houston? Not with a lot of uncertainty right now.
getting more and more nervous by the moment with Woody Marks, the fact that he didn't practice for the first 2 days. Nick Chubb did. Jawar Jordan adds an element to the run game that they don't necessarily have. Like, he's got some speed to him. And I could pretty easily see, even if Woody Marks plays, that this could be a 2-headed, 3-headed monster at times this year. We've seen them use 4 running backs as part of their offensive approach. And I would guess that if Marks plays, he'll be the best one of the bunch. Not going to feel great about him. Probably would still start him over somebody like Breece Hall, but it would be really, really tough to be excited about Woody Marks, knowing that there's other options there. If Woody Marks is out, honestly, I was hoping that Jawar Jordan would have his opportunity without Nick Chubb there, but Chubb playing probably means they're going to rotate running downs, and Dare Ogunbowale will take third downs. So it's probably going to lean toward a stay away on all of the Texans running backs. If Marks plays, maybe you count on him as a top 24 guy.
Okay. Start Nico Collins. We talked about CJ Stroud. Dalton Schultz is top 10. Yeah, look, this has been a tough matchup. Last week was an exception, but the Raiders are still 4th best against tight ends. And Dalton Schultz in tough matchups, to me, like Tennessee earlier in the year, they were tough. He scored 8 points. Baltimore, he scored 11 points. Tennessee, again, he scored 11.1. Buffalo, he scored 1.8. Kansas City, he scored 5.2 PPR fantasy points. So that's 3 bad results in 4 or 5 tough matchups. So Jamie, and the best games here are 11 fantasy points, right? Starters at Dalton Schultz.
Low end starter. I think when you look at it, and Parkinson was in this group too, when you look at these guys that have either good matchups but have not a great track record, or very good track record of Schultz and tough matchup, like, you got to make some tough calls. And in the case of Schultz, like, I'm not going to, I don't think this is one matchup that you run away from completely, and as we saw with Dallas Goedert, like, if you give these guys targets against this defense, I think they'll be okay. So Stroud is dialed in right now with Schultz. Like, we've been talking about Jaden Higgins and can he be a bigger part of this offense? He's kind of been living in that 5 or 6 target range. Christian Kirk has disappeared. Jalen Noel has not necessarily done anything. And I do think if the run game, for whatever reason, is somewhat stagnant, which has happened a lot of times for the Texans, then it's more on CJ Stroud and a better opportunity for Dalton Schultz. So I wouldn't expect a game like we got from him last week, but I also think you can still get that 11 PPR point number, and that makes him, to me, a borderline top 10 guy.
He's done that in 7 of his past 10 games. He's part of just what the Texans do. And I think if it's full PPR, I think he's an easy start.
All right. So start him, start the Texans DST. Let's read some questions here. Bowers or Pitts?
Pitts as of now. I'll probably still stick with Pitts even if London plays.
I won't. I'll pivot to Bowers if Drake London plays.
Woody Marks or Aaron Jones? And would you start Emmanuel Wilson over them if Jacobs were out?
Yes to Wilson.
Yes, Wilson over them, and I'd go Jones over Marks.
I think I would too, but it really does come down to the shape of that Vikings offensive line. If they've got O'Neal back at right tackle, Kelly at center, that's enough for me. That's good enough. Jones would be better.
I think if I played center, they could probably do a decent job.
JJ McCarthy would be in the hospital.
Me against Dexter Lawrence.
And you would be in the hospital too if you were the center.
Kamani Vidal or Woody Marks?
Marks.
You guys would have like a double wide ambulance holding hands on your stretchers as you go to the.
Okay, start 2 in PPR. Genty, Hampton, or Dowdle?
I'd sit Genty.
I would sit Genty if Quinnen Williams is out. I might go Genty over Hampton if Quinnen Williams plays.
Stood or Caleb Williams?
Stroud?
You have to call him Stood.
Yeah, I'd go Caleb.
Sup, Stood. I have Caleb over Stroud by 1 spot.
Marks or Monangai?
Marks, as of now.
Probably Marks, assuming he plays.
Marks or Gainwell?
Gainwell for me.
Marks in maybe Marks in non-PPR. Otherwise, I think Gainwell makes sense.
I wonder who scored more touchdowns this year.
Well, I can look
Gainwell. I would feel confident. Dave, look it up.
Who has more?
Quicker, slicker, looker upper. All right, Green Bay and Chicago. Oh, I said start the Texans DST. Green Bay and Chicago. I am fired up for this game. I feel very confident that the Bears are going to win. So take that for what it's worth. But but we got some tough calls. Jamie, who are the easy calls in Green Bay at Chicago?
Easy calls as in you're starting them.
Yeah.
Jacobs, assuming he plays. I'll say Wilson if Jacobs is out, just because I think most people will use him as a number 2 running back. DeAndre Swift. I'm going to say Colston Loveland because I think he should be started. And I do think that with the other receivers out, I'm going to start DJ Moore as number 2 receiver.
But maybe Watson over Moore or no?
I would go more over Watson just because I'm a little concerned about Watson's, injury track record and would he get banged up again leaving the game. But they'll be almost back to back. Watson will be a top 24 receiver. DJ Moore right now is a top 24 receiver.
Loveland or Schultz?
I would go Schultz, PPR. Loveland and none.
Okay. Dave, do you have an answer for us?
Who has more total touchdowns this season? Kenneth Gainwell or Woody Marks?
Gainwell.
Gainwell. Who has more touchdowns this season? Kenneth Gainwell or Sean Tucker?
Gainwell.
I think Tucker has a 4. I'll take Gainwell.
Tucker.
Oh, wow. This wasn't a tie.
Touchdowns.
Who would do that? Okay. So Jordan Love is outside the top 15, but look, he usually does well against good matchups, and this has been a good matchup. And 2 weeks ago against the Bears, he scored 25.3 fantasy points on 25 pass attempts. So who do you like, Caleb or Dave? Break down the quarterbacks in this game, Caleb versus Jordan Love.
I think it's going to be a favorable matchup for both of them. Easily with Caleb Williams, we know that Micah Parsons is done for the year. That pass rush is still going to be good. I like this pass rush.
This is the game of the week, yeah. The Bears hosting the Packers, a little Saturday game of the week. And it's the game of the week. Hey! Wait, I don't like the look on your face. You don't think this is a game of the week?
I'm not sure if it's the game of the week. So I'm a little surprised that you went with this one.
We did have it last night, but I'm excited for this game. Okay.
And I still continue to be amused that, like, in 3 of the 4 lines of this song, game of the week is in there.
Yeah, I know.
Like you're creative in how you've brought up game of the week. And I thought maybe it was coming right now, but the lyrics could use a little bit more work.
Yeah, they're terrible. All right,
maybe sorry. That's part of the charm. Maybe.
Of course, that's part of it.
You can't, Caleb or Love.
I have. Who do I? They're back to back in my ranks. I have Love 1 spot higher. That's going to stick if Christian Watson plays. If Watson doesn't play, I could flip them.
Okay. Caleb, quarterback in this game or?
So you don't actually care about the analysis of the quarterback?
No, I do. Go ahead.
Long story short, both of them are going to enjoy lesser pass rush pressure. Both of them obviously better when there isn't much pressure on them. It allows them to play a little more freely, get more touchdowns, etc. So this does have some high scoring potential to it. I will give you credit for that, Adam.
Yeah, I think look, Caleb has struggled in 4 of his 6 tough matchups this year. I take a little bit of liberty deciding what's a tough matchup. I don't know if this one is anymore, but he would have had a very good game if he didn't underthrow that ball in the end zone against the Packers. I mean, he was driving down the field it would have been like a 25-point game or something if that's a touchdown. So take that for what it's worth. I think even no, it would have been the 27-point game. Okay.
He's been 22 points or more in 3 straight home games too.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think check the weather because this weekend it seems like Sunday is a good weather day. Saturday may not be great, but I don't think we're looking at anything too bad. And
don't bother checking it until 7 p.m. Eastern.
Well, on what day? What time is this game?
Saturday. The game's Saturday night.
Oh, okay. Then I co-sign on that. Jamie,
night for football.
Swift is baby. Swift, you're not worried about the groin injury?
I mean, he's been playing through some sort of ailment. He's been on the injury report almost every week. So as long as he's out there, I think he's a number 2 running back. It's just a matter of if he's out, then clearly Kyle Monangai is potential superstar. But I think you just got to treat Swift as what he is. 11 PPR points in the last meeting, just didn't score a touchdown. So 3 catches last time these 2 teams met. This guy's a chance to be a high-scoring game. So that's typically something that benefits Swift in the passing game, especially with the receivers being out. That might help him as well. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not getting cute with DeAndre Swift at this point. I'm starting him.
What about Wilson? Okay, so if Jacobs were out, would you start Wilson or Swift?
They would be very close. I might give a slight edge to Wilson just because you know what work he's getting versus Swift still sharing with Monangai.
Is Tremaine Edmonds coming back for Chicago?
So he might be, but let me just give you the TJ Edwards stats.
I mean,
all right?
yeah, he's the big one. Go ahead.
The Bears allow 4.7 yards per carry, 4.8 yards per carry to running backs for the season. So they are so bad without TJ Edwards because with him on the field, they allow 3.7 yards per carry to running backs. And we see it week after week of guys struggling. Jacobs actually did really well, and that was 20 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown. But for the most part, guys are struggling when TJ Edwards plays. It's remarkable. So Wilson, it's like he makes me nervous. I feel like
Do you have those games and who it was?
Yes. So Edwards missed week okay. This is gonna take a little bit of time. So not really. I mean, Barkley, 13 carries for 56 yards. I think you had Chase Brown, 11 for 37. I'm sorry. Honestly, it would take me a little bit of time to go through to that, but they've been so much better with him on the field. It's insane. In fact, 2 weeks ago, he played about half the snaps. And in the half that he played, they were great against the run. And this was against Jacobs. And the half that he didn't play, they struggled against the run. So it's remarkable what he's done for their run defense. But it's tough because it's a tough matchup, I'd say. But you could get 20-plus touches for Wilson. It's hard to turn that down. Like, would you start him over Rico Dowdle?
Yes.
No. But it's close. Like, I could see myself putting Wilson in my top 20.
Kenneth Gainwell or Emmanuel Wilson in full PPR?
Gainwell.
Probably Wilson.
All right. If Christian Watson plays, he's going to be basically around 24th. He's been really good. If he doesn't play, is that where Jaden Reed would live?
No, all three
No.
Packers receivers would be below Christian Watson. And for me, it would be a little bit tough. It is tough between Reed and Dobbs because Dobbs, in the 6 games that Watson did not play, he was averaging 13 PPR points per game over that span. Now, clearly some up and down performances in there, but that's what the average is. Reed, we've yet to see a huge game in his return, but I think that would be a plus for him, plus where he'll line up. And I hope how much they would be creative in using him, especially if Jacobs doesn't play, then that would help as well. So right now I have Reed slightly ahead of Dobbs, but they're almost back-to-back and right around wide receiver 30.
Anything else from this game? Dave, we talked about DJ Moore. He's going to be a borderline top 24 guy. We talked about the quarterbacks. Don't start Monangai. I do think it's worth pointing out that Swift had the first 6 carries last week, which isn't necessarily a shock. It's a little bit more than what he usually gets. But he had a bigger percentage of the carries than he usually does. If you have Swift, cross your fingers that this is a sign of them kind of favoring him. But there's no evidence of that right now.
I just think they trust him a little bit more. And the snap share wasn't that different either. So it just, a little bit of it is, all right, whose drive is it? Is it Swift's drive? Is it Monangai's drive? Is it a long drive? Are they going to replace each other? Last week, Monangai had more of the third down work and a slight edge inside the 10. But I think push comes to shove. If it's a close game, you're going to see Swift on the field. I think they trust him more, and they use him more when they're trailing. And if this is going to be a high-scoring back-and-forth game, for example, then Swift is going to play more and get more touches.
Which DST do you prefer?
Packers.
I think it's the Packers by a little, and I don't want to start either one.
Yeah.
And did Zach Tom practice? That's the right tackle for Green Bay.
He's out,
Okay.
right?
Is he out?
He's questionable.
I think most of the Packers stuff I've read just is they're hoping that they're expecting Jacobs and Watson to play. They don't think Tom will play.
Yeah, I think that hurts, obviously, not having one of your best offensive linemen playing.
All right. Let's get to the questions here. Love, Dart, Bryce Young. Pick 2.
Bryce is still the odd man out.
Agreed.
Watson or Ibuka?
Watson.
Watson if he plays.
Loveland or Darren Waller?
Loveland.
Colston.
Loveland or Goddard?
Got it.
Goddard.
Oh, all right. It's a bet. I'll take Loveland in PPR. Loveland or Bowers?
Winner wears an orange shirt.
It's red. It's red.
Loveland or Bowers. I will root through my garbage can and hope that Bowers gets some garbage time production.
Aren't you colorblind?
Yes, but this is definitely red.
It's 100% red.
Okay. DJ Moore or Terry McLaurin? That's a tough one.
Right now, I think I have McLaurin ahead, but I might switch that.
I don't see myself switching that. I'm going McLaurin.
DJ Moore or Marvin Harrison Jr.?
That'll be Marvin if he plays.
That's a close one. I think I'll take Marvin, but it's close.
All right, last one. Drake May or Jordan Love?
May.
It's gonna be May. Let's go to
We're
a
all
break.
thinking it.
Yeah. I don't know if I've done that all year. Let's take a break. Philadelphia at Washington when we come back on FFT.
Hi.
Novocaine?
Novocaine!
Novocaine is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
You're gonna love this.
Oh, you're strong!
It's wildly entertaining and an absolute blast.
I'm in.
Novocaine, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, let's do it. Eagles at the Commanders. Concern of the game. The Eagles have only won 2 games by 7 or more points, or by more than 7 points, and Jalen Hurts threw 20 and 15 times in those 2 games. So, but he had 2 huge fantasy games. Jalen Hurts is our number 2 quarterback. Saquon Barkley is a top 10 running back. A.J. Brown is a must start. Dave, start or sit Devontae Smith.
Low end number 2 wide receiver, in part because there's just this glob of receivers that have the potential to do well, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I don't have great reasons to start Devontae Smith other than favorable matchup, and he should get some opportunities, but we could have said that at any point over the last 3 games and we would have been struggling. Like I'm starting him over Ibuka, starting him over Brian Thomas Jr., definitely starting him over Jalen Waddle. And I'm hoping he catches like a long pass that he takes to the end zone. Obviously, I'm thinking that every week, but this does feel like a game script that could mirror last week for Philadelphia, where they don't have to throw a lot.
That's exactly what it is with him, is with Devontae Smith. I don't know if this is updated through last week, but at least going into last week, he had 6 end zone targets, 2 green zone targets. And of his 6 end zone targets, only one of them was from closer than 13 yards out. So he like has to catch a deep ball basically. And
then here's the other thing. In the last 2 games, what's helped Philadelphia's offense get back on track, at least through the passing game? It's been Dallas Goedert. Goedert's got a ton of targets over the last 2 weeks. He's done very well with them. Even in a game where they're not going to throw a lot, I can't see Smith getting to 6 or 7 targets and doing really well with them. You're hoping for him to explode. That's not the type of thing that you want to start. And certainly you can't start with confidence.
Can you start Dallas Goedert with confidence, Jamie?
I think you have to at this point, just based on what you've seen and the matchup. And again, it's not the same level of Colby Parkinson because of Dallas Goedert's resume, but you're counting on a tight end that had some inconsistencies and has a great matchup in front of him. And as just mentioned, this could be a Devontae Smith week. I don't think we'll see all 3 guys have a big game because it rarely happens in terms of Brown, Smith, and Goedert.
What happened one time all year where they've all scored double digits?
It's their track record together historically. So I'm starting Goedert based on what I've seen from him the last 2 games and what the matchup is. Washington is terrible against tight ends. They've been terrible all year against tight ends. So hopefully this is something that is continuing from the last 2 games and carries over this week. As Dave said, what's helped Jalen Hurts, it's been leaning on Goedert a little bit more. And so, is he safe? No. Is the opportunity and matchup there for him? Yes. So I think you got to treat him as a top 10 tight end. And if you've been starting him, you should continue to. If you're pivoting from, let's say you have Pitts and Goedert and you're worried about London's return and the scenario there, you can go to Goedert over Pitts. But to me, I'm starting Goedert over. I like him better than Schultz. I'd start him over Loveland. I'd start him over. I would have said start him over Parkinson. I had it ranked that way. Mm-hmm. Strange and Johnson and all these other guys that have been
Waller?
Good at times this season. And over Waller, yeah.
I would agree. I would start him over Waller. I just did some quick looks at what the Commanders have allowed at wide receiver. This is going back to Devontae Smith. 11 receivers have at least 14.9 PPR points against Washington this year. 9 of them had at least 7 targets. I don't feel good about Devontae Smith getting 7 targets in the game. It goes back to what I said 2 minutes ago. We need an explosive play or two from him to be awesome for fantasy. I think I've got him ranked too high.
Okay. The Commanders, actually, in their last 5 games, only Jamison Williams is the only wide receiver with more than 62 yards against them, including Waddle, St. Brown, Sutton, the Vikings guys, Wan'Dale Robinson. They've given up some touchdowns, but actually have done better in terms of yards. Goddard, all right, you just heard the case for Dallas Goddard. Commanders allow the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. Are you starting any Commanders player confidently, Jamie?
No, McLaurin would be the closest one, but I think you just look at it again. Matchup's not easy for him, and I know again the 2 of the 3 best games, 2 of the 3 games where he's done well lately, the 2 were where we had full games from Marcus Mariota. And so, again, Denver, Kansas City, scored a touchdown in both those games. Huge game against Denver. But Philly's just been great against opposing wide receivers. So it's easy to get away from Debo because he hasn't been productive since McLaurin has been back, at least consistently. Last time we had a big game from him was the Dolphins game, if I'm not mistaken, in Madrid. I just think you look at McLaurin and hope that his talent shines through, hope that his history against Philadelphia comes through, hope that his connection with Mariota stays strong. So, number 2 receiver, but in that range of guys where it starts to get murky. Can't trust the running backs at all. There's just no way you can say Rodriguez is going to score against Philadelphia. Krosky Merritt's going to have a good game. Like I couldn't tell you with any confidence who the best Washington running back is because Krosky Merritt coming off that game and knowing that their season's lost, why would they not give him more work and just see what happens there? Rodriguez is never going to be a featured guy for them. Maybe, Krosky Merritt can, JCM can, so he would be the best one, but deep league flex at best.
All right. See if we have any McLaurin questions. The Eagles are actually better against slot receivers than outside receivers. They are unbelievable against slot receivers. Remember the Ladd McConkey game a couple weeks ago? They are allowed the 2nd fewest receiving yards to slot receivers. So keep an eye on that if you're thinking about starting Debo Samuel. Let's see what we have in the chat. Devontae Smith or Juwan Jennings?
Jennings.
Jennings.
McLaurin or Teterow McMillan or Jaden Reed?
Definitely not Reed. This is where it starts to get, close between these type of guys. I'd probably lean McLaurin over McMillan.
Agreed.
So this is the same question, but slightly different. We like Juwan Jennings over Devontae Smith. And we like DeAndre Swift over Smith too.
I do.
Yeah. AJ Brown, Rashee Rice, or Jalen Waddle?
I don't
Rice, if
think
he
Rice
plays,
is playing. Right.
Yeah. I would go Brown.
It's easily Brown.
Debo Samuel or Keenan Allen?
I go
Debo.
Keenan. I go Keenan if Quentin Johnson's up.
Terry McLaurin or Audric Estime?
Terry.
Estime.
Devontae Smith or Ladd McConkey?
Ladd.
Agreed.
And pick 2. McLaurin, Ibuka, Justin Jefferson, Woody Marks, Darren Waller.
If it's PPR, I'd probably go McLaurin and Jefferson and just hope that he's does something against his
catches a football.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's McLaurin and Jefferson for me.
2 almost touchdowns for Jefferson last week. I can't stop thinking about that. And we're almost on to that game. Chargers are at the Cowboys. Our next game
I would be
here.
walking to a championship if he had scored because I lost in our YOLO Dynasty League. Got upset. And then I have Stafford and Puka.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
Sucks, man.
And Puka. Wow. Chargers at Cowboys. Okay, I gave you the stat of the game about Quinn Williams. So what are we expecting from this slumping Chargers offense, Dave? How many points? I think we talked about it. I think I threw out 24 points. Are they going to get there? Jamie, if I recall, said yes. You were kind of on the fence. Their implied total is around 23 or so.
So it's going to be close. I'm still very, very worried about the state of their offensive line, and it's going to be that way for the rest of the year. I reviewed the film from last week, and I thought that Justin Herbert made some unbelievable throws given the circumstances. The Chiefs were in his face really, really fast. They had a bunch of pressures that were getting there inside of even 2 seconds off the snap. So it's not a good offensive line, but that was last week against Kansas City, and that's a really good pass rush. This is Dallas. Their pass rush is nowhere near as good. And if they don't have Quinnen Williams, it's really tepid. And you could see Justin Herbert have a little bit more time, make some more of those dandy throws. But I do think the Chargers can also run the ball better in this matchup, easier matchup, especially if there's no Quinnen Williams. And they came off the bus last week running the football, and they had some pretty decent success with it early on. Hampton had a big run, a breakaway run in the second half that helped his numbers. I worry a little bit about just how much Justin Herbert will do in the game, because I think Hampton and Vidal could have some good opportunities, with Hampton maybe coming away with the better game.
Jamie, looking at the other side of the ball, do you have any questions about the Cowboys being able to score? Because since week 8, the Chargers are first in yards per game, second in yards per play, fifth in points per game allowed. They've seen the fewest plays in the NFL in that stretch. They're doing a great job in that regard. They held the Eagles to 19 points, the Chiefs to 13 points. Other than that, they really haven't faced a lot of good offenses. And the Cowboys, I mean, look, they scored 24 points at Denver, 24 against the Eagles, 31 against the Chiefs, 26 against the Vikings, 40 against the Packers. I think they score on everyone. Do you kind of feel that way?
They certainly do at home. That's a big part of this. Remember, the Packers defense looked, so dominant in that game, and it was early in the season, but that's kind of, I think, where it was like, oh wow, this Dallas offense can not just be good, they could be amazing. And so in the case of the main options, and there's 4 of them at this point, I don't think Jake Ferguson right now is somebody that you could say is trustworthy, but the quarterback, the 2 receivers, and the running back, like, it's very difficult to bench any of them. So in Dak's case, and just full transparency, I would have said the same thing about Stafford last night, like Jacoby Brissett over him, Brock Purdy over him. I think those guys are a little bit safer. Joe Burrow, if you picked him up along the way, I feel like Burrow may have a higher ceiling than Dak Prescott this week. Javonte is probably the toughest one for me, because as much as Pickens has struggled, there's still so much upside there. I think in the case of Javonte, you kind of look at it as he's not 100% right now. Can he have success catching the ball? Because that hasn't been there for him consistently. Because I do think that we could see the Chargers playing with the lead in this game, and then the Cowboys having to throw. So Javonte still has touchdown potential. Still going to get so much work that it's hard to overlook his opportunities. So I think you just treat him as number 2 running back. I have them in a similar range. So what Kyron gave you last night, I think that's kind of a good baseline for what Javonte could be. 11, 12 PPR points. If he scores, you'll be thrilled. CeeDee Lamb to me is a must-start guy no matter what. And again, for Pickens, I do think that there's the conversation about where he's at, contract, all these things, getting called out a little bit, that we need to see a good game from him, but I just don't think there's enough good fantasy wide receivers that you're benching him for. I would start him over McLaurin. I start him over, like Jennings is a close one for me. I have him almost back to back. Sutton, you could clearly make an argument. Sutton over Pickens at this point. But there's not many wide receivers that you can say are better than George Pickens and his upside.
And then you got to think about it. The Chargers allow the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, but have they done it against great receivers? Well, the ones that stand out that have been bad are DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, and last week Rashee Rice. And only one of those guys compares to George Pickens, right? Like, they've had a pretty easy schedule in terms of wide receivers, and most good wide receivers actually do well against the Chargers. It's a weird thing to say because they're number 1 against the position. But
I think you kind of treat it like we got a dress rehearsal for this game last week. Minnesota's defense, very similar numbers, very similar production in terms of what they allowed. Dak threw the ball well. Dak just didn't get touchdowns. He had 294 yards, just didn't score. If the Javonte touchdown and the Malik Davis touchdown are 2 touchdowns for Dak Prescott, like, there's no concerns.
It's such a great point. I mean, what a really good way to put it. I mean, Minnesota and the Chargers are pretty similar in terms of their offense and their defense right now. And I know there's some differences, but you get the point. So good way to phrase it there. Okay. How about the tight ends, Dave? Gadsden and Ferguson. How you feel about them?
Don't love either one. Ferguson over Gadsden, but they're both like high-end number 2 tight ends for me. I'm a little more worried about Dak than maybe Jamie is, just because of what we just talked about. He just went up against a Minnesota defense. He didn't throw a touchdown. His offensive line isn't quite the same. Tyler Guyton hasn't been at left tackle. It's been about 4 games. He left in the middle of a game and then 3 since. He's been above 20.4 fantasy points once. That was against the Chiefs. That's saying something. And it makes me wonder if the Chargers, who I think they're a top 5 defense, just like reality NFL, maybe not for fantasy, but I think they're one of the better defenses in the league right now. They find ways to get to the quarterback. I think they're going to make things tough on Dak Prescott. And I've lowered expectations on Dak this week. And I think that bleeds down into Ferguson, a little bit into Pickens. Not that you're going to bench Pickens. Like Jamie said, he's still, you can start him as a number 2 wide receiver and feel fine about it. But Ferguson just makes me a little bit nervous. I don't want to run back to Gadsden, especially if Quentin Johnston plays. If Johnston plays, there's been a correlation between him playing, Gadsden not being good. Johnston's out, Gadsden gets some more opportunities. So I think the Chargers will run the ball a little bit better this game.
So just 2 things there. Dak in 5 of 7 home games this year, 23 or more fantasy points. And to Dave's point about Johnston and Gadsden, the 2 games that Johnston missed, Gadsden is 10.8 PPR points or more. So that's a low end starter if he gets those numbers.
Yeah, Jamie's much higher on Gadsden. He has him 10th. Dave has him 17th. He has Gadsden 8th. So they disagree there.
And the matchup's good because 3 of the last 4 tight ends against Dallas have been 11.1 PPR points or more.
And that would be Bowers, Kelsey, and Hawkinson. What was I going to say? Oh, Javonte. I mean, I feel like I would love Javonte if I felt good about his health. This is one of the best matchups he's had in a long time. But I know he's coming. He ran 1 route last week. Basically, they brought him in to run the ball, and then they took him off the field. So how about last thing here, and then we'll get to your chat questions. Hampton and Vidal, Jamie, your thoughts here. It's been a pretty even split between the 2 of them each of the last 2 weeks. They certainly did not ride the hot hand as they said they were going to do, and they didn't really have a hot hand. But how do you feel about the Chargers backs?
So in terms of playing time, I mentioned this on CBS Sports Network yesterday. Dave brought this up on one of our recent shows. When you look at snap count versus touches, and every time Hampton's on the field, he's getting opportunities to touch the ball. So while his playing time is not what you would like to see, and clearly his touches would go up if he's playing more, you should know when Amari Hampton's on the field, he's probably going to get a carry or he's going to get an opportunity to have a chance for a target. So I think that still Hampton is the better of the 2 running backs. He clearly has a chance at some point, and maybe it's this week, to start to play more as they feel he's ramped up. That being said, there's a reason why you can't trust Amari Hampton as, let's say, a top 15 running back. This is so swayed for both these guys if Quinnen Williams plays. He showed up at practice yesterday, so you got to keep an eye on that. If he clears the concussion protocol, you said this before, like the 5 games now that they've played with Quinnen Williams. Genty sucked. I don't know how much you want to use that. Barkley was bad. Jahmyr Gibbs did not have a good day running the ball. He just happened to score 3 touchdowns and was awesome in the passing game. Montgomery is actually the best running back against them since Quinnen Williams scored. He had 8 carries for 60 yards. But you look at the body of work and the players that they faced, this does not set up well for Amari Hampton or Vidal if Quinnen Williams is there because they're not huge factors in the passing game. Now, if Williams is out, you go back to what the beginning of the season was. Everybody was running on Dallas. And so I think this is so swayed by one player. So Williams in, Hampton's a flex at best. Vidal is somebody I would not want to start. Williams out, Hampton is a borderline number 2 running back in the top 20 range.
Yes.
And Vidal becomes a desperation flex if you need someone. But clearly you got to keep an eye on the practice reports here. So if you have to make a decision with a Saturday guy, we'll hopefully get an answer on Williams. Most likely he's going to be ruled out today if he doesn't play. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. So to the questions here, and I think we'll get a quick question about Keenan Allen here. I think that's pretty interesting because Keenan Allen's actually had a pretty good target share. They just don't throw very much. But if we get a high scoring game, then maybe it could get 7.
Last week has to be really encouraging for Keenan Allen because no Quentin Johnston, the targets were up.
All right. So Lad McConkey, Chris Olave, Tedero McMillan, Emeka Ibuka, pick 2. Olave is going to be the easy one. So McConkey, McMillan, Ibuka, PPR.
I currently have McConkey over McMillan.
Agreed.
McConkey or Pickens?
Pickens.
Georgie.
Hampton, Genty, or Judkins, or Gainwell?
Right now, it's...
Go ahead, Jamie, because this is playing right into the if-then game with Quinn.
Yeah, right now I have it ranked Judkins, Hampton, Genty. It would be Hampton, Judkins, Genty if
Wait a second.
Williams is out.
Wait a second. I got Gainwell in there too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gainwell's over all these guys for me. Hampton would be second if Quinnen Williams is out.
Hampton, Gainwell. Yeah, Hampton, Gainwell if Quinnen Williams is out. If Quinnen Williams plays, it's Gainwell, and then I guess Judkins.
Okay.
Hey, one other thing. Actually, two other things, because it's the same type of subject. Neither CeeDee Lamb nor Deron Bland practiced yet this week.
Oh, Bland's out for the season, it seems.
It looks like he's going to miss the game. He's their best corner, if I'm not mistaken.
He's not even that good, in my opinion.
I don't think he's a shutdown guy, but I think they use him specifically against other wide receivers, like top wide receivers, and he's had some good games. Lamb's been out with an illness. It's just one other thing to keep an eye on. I'm expecting Lamb to play.
He did show up to meetings yesterday, so I think that's a sign that he's going to be
hopefully
okay.
he doesn't get everybody else sick.
Hampton or Tracy?
Tracy.
Agreed.
Burrow or Herbert?
Burrow, but it's close.
Herbert
I
or
believe
Dak?
Heath has Herbert ranked ahead of Burrow.
Herbert or Dak?
Dak, but it's close.
Dak or Baker?
Dak.
I've got Baker a couple spots higher.
We need some more quarterback ones here. Dak or Dart?
Jackson
Dak
Dart.
for me.
Dak and Dart. Okay, split there.
Yeah.
Dak or Herbert or Dart?
Herbert for me.
Dart for me.
All right, we got to get moving here. Let's go to our next game, and it is the Giants and the Vikings. Okay, Giants Vikings. This is a tough one. This is kind of a tough, tricky game. Vikings are a 3-point favorite, but the total is only 43.5, so expected to be low scoring here. Dave, who are the easy calls? That's right. There are
I don't know if there's a super easy slam dunk Vikings player. So go to the Giants. I still think Jackson Dart's playing great. And I know it's a tough matchup, but it's gotten easier. There's no Jonathan Grenard rushing the quarterback. There's no Josh Metellus in the secondary. This is easy. Javon Hargrave might not play. This Vikings defense is taking a hit. Those are 3 big losses on defense. And Dart's done well in tough matchups already this year. We saw it at Denver, against the Chargers, 2 games against Philly. He's been good. It's the rushing floor. He gives you a bunch of numbers on the ground. Fingers crossed that he doesn't miss time because of an injury.
He'll be in the 10.
But at that, I don't even want to speak into existence. I want him to play 4 quarters and that he balls out, and I think he will. So he's a top 12 quarterback for me. That doesn't mean it's easy. It just means that he's ranked high. Same thing with Tracy. I don't think it's easy to start him, but you should be encouraged based on how he's been playing really since Mike Kafka took over as the interim head coach and kept calling plays for the Giants. Wandale is an easy start, especially in full PPR.
Yeah.
Volume's been there. He's been great. That's it for the easy guys.
Yeah. I don't know if any wide receiver is an easy start against the Vikings. They are erasers. And yeah, all right. But Wandale's probably going to get his 8+ targets and give you a floor at the very least. Jamie, you're not as high on Jackson Dart unless the rankings have changed. Dave has him 10th and you have him 16th.
Yeah, correct. I know there's some injuries there, but Brian Flores is still there, and what he's done against opposing quarterbacks, plus what they do against rushing quarterbacks, they're 8th fewest in terms of rushing yards allowed to the position. And the last 6 quarterbacks against them, Lamar Jackson coming off that amazing game against Miami, Caleb Williams, who had been playing well, Jordan Love, who had been playing well, Sam Darnold, who had been playing well, Jaden Daniels, you want to say that was a tough one to judge, and Dak Prescott. The only quarterback to go for over 200 yards in that stretch is Dak Prescott. There have been 1 passing touchdown allowed. So even if they're not at their best and not at full strength, I still think that Jackson Dart is under 20 fantasy points. So I would try to sit him if you can.
It's 2 compelling cases. It really is, because I love the fact that he's done great in tough matchups. I love the fact that he ran. I just don't think it's a lot of designed runs right now. He was scrambling last week because he didn't run much at all against New England 3 weeks ago. All right, who's your favorite running back in this game? I think we said was Tracy.
Yep.
Okay. Gosh, if it's been such an even split in terms of the carries for Jones and Mason the last 2 weeks. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd feel really good about these guys. But we like Jones better. He's more involved in the passing game. I think Mason might be more likely to work at the goal line, but that's just a hunch. Let's call it 50-50. like a Swift Monangai thing or something like that, or a Corum Kyron thing. But Jones or Hampton, is that a Quinnen Williams thing?
It is, but it's also an offensive line thing for Minnesota. If they're healthy on that offensive line, that definitely encourages me to trust the Vikings running backs more.
Yeah, it doesn't matter for me. I'm going to take Jones. Matchup is just too good, even with Quinnen Williams out for Dallas. I just think you've seen enough of this Giants defense, and both teams are going to have offensive line concerns one way or the other. If the Vikings guys are missing, not like the Chargers are getting healthy on their offensive line. So I just think Jones has a little bit of a higher ceiling. Again, unless we know that Hampton's going to play more and get more opportunities, they're probably going to get the same amount of touches. And just everybody against the Giants has just been dominant.
All right, we like the trends for McCarthy. We love the matchup, but it's a good week for quarterbacks. So McCarthy is no higher than 19th in the rankings for any of us. All right, and that brings us to Justin Jefferson and the passing game. Jamie Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. I'll throw Jalen Naylor in there. Do you start any of them with confidence?
No. Jefferson's still the best of the bunch with the hope that these two connect. Right now, the worst pass in the NFL this season has been anything J.J. McCarthy has tried to throw to Justin Jefferson. Like, that's just, we're begging for targets, but it just hasn't been working. At some point, you think it's going to connect, but they've now just faced in back-to-back games the Commanders and the Cowboys, and those are as good as a matchup as you can find. So it's hopeful. It's hopeful that Jefferson connects, but it's basically like low-end number 2, high-end number 3 receiver at this point. You can't say Justin Jefferson is safe. It's just unfortunate. Addison, similar situation. And, Jalen Naylor has popped up at times. I believe this the second time he's had good fantasy game. I'm not trusting it. The week before it was Josh Oliver, so McCarthy's just kind of in this spot right now with everybody but Jefferson, or at least somebody but Jefferson will do well. Hopefully this is the Jefferson week.
He has 9.7 PPR fantasy points in his last 3 games combined. Justin Jefferson. That is an unbelievable statistic there. Giants give up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. So I think you could at least look at him as a guy in his range with upside, because he is Justin Jefferson. It kind of reminds me of what Heath said about Travion Henderson last week. He's in this group of running backs we're uncertain about, but he has that big play potential. At least that, and the matchup's good with Jefferson. Hawkinson is no higher than 18th. He does have 9.2 or more PPR fantasy points in 3 straight games, but he's almost never getting more than 6 targets. And Theo Johnson or TJ Hawkinson?
I mean, the matchup would say it's probably better for Hawkinson, but they're both good against tight ends, and Theo Johnson just gets more targets.
I agree.
Okay. He usually does with Jackson Dart. He did not last week, but he usually does with Dart. Theo Johnson or Colson Loveland?
Loveland.
Agreed.
Waller or Theo?
Waller.
Let me double check where I'm at with those guys. I have Theo 1 spot ahead of Waller. # Quinn Ewers.
Here's a question in the chat. Vikings or Bengals DST?
I'd go
Vikings. I
guys
can't
like
trust the Bengals DST. I get why you would ask that.
Yeah. Do you like the Vikings DST?
Yeah,
it's not a good week for DSTs, so they're a borderline starter.
Jefferson. All right, chat questions. Jefferson and McLaurin?
McLaurin.
Agreed.
Dart or Stroud?
Stroud for me.
Dart. I'll take Dart.
Vikings or Chiefs DST?
Chiefs.
Chiefs.
Jordan Mason, Michael Carter, or Kyle Monangai?
Monangai, if Swift is out, Carter otherwise.
Pick 2. Dart, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams?
I would sit Trevor Lawrence.
I would as well.
Dart or Drake May?
May.
What's that song again, Adam?
It's gonna be Dart. It's gonna be May, right?
It is going to be May.
Tracy or Wandale?
Tracy.
That's
I
tough.
think Tracy's safer. He caught 3 passes last week. He's definitely their passing downs guy.
Okay, I will tell you that the Vikings. Oh, where is this? They've been very good against pass catching running backs, I believe. They allow the fewest receiving yards per game to running backs.
They're good against receivers too, though. So you're not really getting a slam dunk either way. I would just lean toward Tracy definitely getting his touches.
All right, Aaron Jones, Michael Carter, or Marion Hampton?
Jones.
Hampton, especially if Quinnen Williams doesn't play. I might move Jones ahead if Quentin Williams does play.
Moving on to the next game. Tampa Bay is at Carolina. Oh boy. All right, listen. We talked on Wednesday's show pretty in depth about Tetaroa McMillan and Emeka Ibuka. So I'm not going to do that again today, or we'll be here until tomorrow. So those guys are tricky, and I get it. Who do you like better, Jamie, Ibuka or McMillan?
McMillan.
Dave?
McMillan.
And where do you have them ranked, Dave?
McMillan is a low-end number 2 wide receiver in full PPR. Ibuka is currently in the flex range.
Okay, we're going to hope for a bounce back in targets for McMillan. It's been pretty bad the last 2 weeks. Baker Mayfield is 14th for Jamie, 11th for Dave, 13th for Heath. He's a good starter. He was good last week. I'm actually pretty excited about him. I mean, he got his guy back. He looked revived. And Evans, Jamie, you just love Evans, right?
I mean, it's hard not to after what we saw last week, and he didn't even play, a normal snap share for him. So hopefully he's on the field a little bit more. But his last 5 games against Carolina is 36 catches, 606 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that's with 1 bad game in there. So he just dominated them last year with 16 catches. I forget the yardage, but 3 touchdowns in the 2 games, 21 targets in those 2 games. So this is a matchup where he typically feasts. I think he's going to continue to be the go-to guy. Clearly, he's now 260 some odd yards per game away from his 1,000-yard season. So maybe he starts to get rolling, but just must-start guy at this point. And I think in the case of Ibuka and the trickle-down effect, like Godwin, you got a touchdown last week. Ibuka's targets were still okay, but didn't do much with them. They're talking about McMillan getting more work and K-Dot in practice in full, so he's going to be back on the field also for what that's worth. So I think it's just Evans and then maybes for everybody else. Ibuka's still the second best option for me, but it's not anything with a lot of certainty.
Okay, you don't like Godwin.
I just don't think it's tough. It's hard to trust him. He didn't have a lot of targets last week, and will he see a jump in targets? Like I think it's Evans is going to get the lion's share, and then we'll see whatever else sort of trickles down to everybody else. So Godwin and Ibuka are very close, but they're just number 3 receivers.
Okay. For what it's worth, Panthers are 11th against wide receivers. I don't think they're very good. They just don't see a lot of targets typically. But that brings us to the running backs, right? Are these teams going to be able to run the ball? Dave, are you confident in Bucky or Dowdle this week?
I'm confident that Bucky can get work. He's been getting a good amount of work since he's been back from injury. It's what he's doing with it, and when he's getting it, that's bothersome. The efficiency hasn't been good. He's not working at the goal line, and it makes me a little bit nervous. That being said, I'm nervous about a lot of running backs this week, so I'm not ready to sink him, especially against Carolina. Like, this isn't that tough of a matchup. He should be able to do moderately well, even with the offensive line issues that Tampa's got. So I'm okay with Bucky. I think you start him. He's my favorite running back in this game. Dowdle is still going to share a little bit too much for my liking with Chuba, but I still think he's the better running back. We talked about him already. Hopefully the Bucs run defense, hopefully for them, they get better because they're going to get Servase Dennis back at linebacker, get Deion Jones off the field, I believe is who will miss time. And that'll be good for them, but it's still Rico Dowdle. It's still potential for a good game, not necessarily a great game.
Question in the chat, Aaron Jones or Rico Dowdle?
Dowdle, but it's close.
I've got Dowdle ahead of him.
Dowdle, okay. Who's the best sleeper in this game? I'll throw these guys out there. Okay, we got Chris Godwin, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Coker.
There you go.
It's either Coker or Godwin, and I might lean toward Coker because of the matchup against Tampa. The secondary has been targeted quite a bit this year, and Coker's an interesting play. Like he's a big guy. He's not necessarily a fast guy, but he moves with a veteran savvy. He's a pretty solid route runner. It's just a matter of, is he going to get more than 4 or 5 targets? Is this going to be a game where Bryce Young throws 30 plus times? There haven't been that many of those. And so that makes me a little bit nervous, but I don't know if the Panthers view Tetaroa McMillan through the same lens that we view Tetaroa McMillan, where he's ranked so far ahead of Jalen Coker. I almost wonder if it should be a little bit closer together between those two.
How far apart do you have them?
I've got Tetaroa McMillan at 22. Coker's at 30.
Yeah, I don't think that's far off. I mean,
Oh,
I have
that's
same
pretty
range.
close.
But I wonder if the Panthers would say you've got McMillan too high or Coker too low. Like I wonder
I
if they
mean,
would say that they're
the season long body of work would say that McMillan's still their guy, but the
Coker
last few
hasn't played
weeks,
for a huge chunk of the year, so I would agree with that.
I mean, McMillan is so talented. You watch all the tape. You see it. This guy is
Yes,
terrific.
there's no question who the more talented receiver is.
And Coker's had a 20-plus air yard touchdown 2 straight games. That's not something you want to
Yeah.
bank on.
Right.
Tampa Bay's defense, they're 24th in points per game. They're 26th in yards per play. They've allowed 21.3 or more fantasy points to a quarterback in 6 straight games, including Tyler Shuck and Kirk Cousins the last 2 games. So, could be a good day for Bryce Young. Could be a good day for this could be a high.
you just never know which plan of attack the Panthers are going to have and how well Bryce Young may or may not play. So the hope would be is that the Bucs offense shows up early, and similar to what happened with the Falcons last week, where they're throwing, and you get a good game from Kirk Cousins, you get a good game from Bryce Young. It can easily happen, So I just don't think you're starting. We had this conversation on Tuesday. Like, you're not starting Bryce Young over a lot of the established quarterbacks, the established fantasy quarterbacks. So like Baker, for example, you're not going to start him there. Like, you can make the case for Bryce Young over Trevor Lawrence, over potentially Caleb Williams, potentially Jordan Love, if there's no, Christian Watson, no Zach Tom, no Josh Jacobs. Like, he's missing a lot of talent there. But I think you just kind of put him in this sort of, okay, am I desperate? And that's where I'll pivot to Bryce Young, so huge upside, but also very, very, very low floor.
All right. And if you want to be encouraged by the running backs, both of these teams have really struggled against the run lately. So hopefully that.
Bucky in 2 games against them last year, 23+ points in both of them.
Dowdle or Estime, non-PPR?
Still got to go Dowdle. Wouldn't surprise me if Estime's better, but Dowdle.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Dowdle or Swift?
Swift for me.
DeAndre Swift.
Coker or Estime, half PPR?
I'll go Estime.
I'd lean Coker.
Pick one. Dowdle, Judkins, Hampton, PPR.
Dowdle.
I currently have Dowdle ranked the highest of the 3. I might pivot to Hampton if there's no Quinnen Williams.
McMillan, Harvey, Ibuka, or Michael Carter, PPR?
McMillan.
It's either him or Harvey. I think I'd go Harvey. I'd go Harvey.
But no, I'm not trying to criticize. That's tough. Ibuka or Adonai Mitchell?
I think right now I have them almost back to back.
Me
Ibuka
too.
Feels like he's. I'm going to go Mitchell. I'm going to switch it.
I think I have almost the exact same sentiment. I have Ibuka higher. I'm worried about the target volume being anywhere close to where it's been for him this year. Mitchell has had the target volume. I really like how he's played with Brady Cook, and the matchup isn't tough.
It's only one game where he's been good with Brady Cook, though.
The other game, Brady Cook came in cold off the bench, and they didn't have any kind of timing then. But
he had about the same stats. Cook is thrown for 163 and 176 yards in 2 games. Just saying. But hey, I get it. All right, we're going to talk about
comparing a number 1 receiver with arguably a number 3 receiver.
Yeah. No, it's possible.
On his own team, I'm saying maybe the number 2 receiver as well. I got to run, guys. I'm sorry.
Ibuka has been really last week got almost no targets with Mike Evans on the field.
Yeah,
okay, Jamie, about 5 minutes left, if that's okay with you, for 2 games. Atlanta at Arizona. Now remember, Michael Wilson and Kyle Pitts are 2 of the most difficult decisions, but we already talked about that about 4 hours ago when we did 1 question for each game. So if you missed that, rewind to 1 question for each game. We talked about it fairly in depth. Kirk Cousins has a great opportunity here. He's just like Bryce Young. He's behind Bryce Young. Is McCarthy or Cousins?
I'd go McCarthy.
Okay, so look, you could start him, maybe good DFS or something, but there are just a lot of better quarterbacks this week. Start Bijan, sit Algier. If Drake London,
I don't know if I agree with Sid Algier. I think Algier's in that same Monangai, Charbonnet, Corum range because they've given up a lot of touchdowns to running backs lately. And we know how this, typically goes for him. It wouldn't shock me if he scores.
No.
And just to go back to the previous game, same thing with Sean Tucker. Like the Panthers give a lot of rushing touchdowns. If Tucker's still in that goal line role, he scored in 2 straight games. Tucker also, you asked about sleepers. Tucker's not far behind Coker for me.
Okay. Sorry about that. If Drake London plays, where are you going to rank him?
Top 15.
Rashee Rice or Drake London?
Well, if Rice plays, Rice, but like you're talking about 2 guys that have very big question marks there.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, Rice is must-start guy if he still starts.
Mike Evans or Drake London?
Oh, Evans.
I mean, London is on fire before his injury. 3 straight massive games, I believe. Yeah, 38.8, 24.4, 18.9 fantasy points. All right, you know what to do with Pitts. He's 3rd. If London plays, he'll still be worth starting, but not as good. Jacoby Brissett is QB3. Come back to Michael Carter in a second. If Marvin Harrison Jr. plays, where are you ranking him?
Right around 18, 19. That questionable range. He'll be ahead of that group just because every time he's played with Jacoby Brissett, the targets have been there for him. So
yeah,
hopefully that's the case. It's just a matter of re-injury.
I mean, this is such a good game for offense. These teams are really bad defensively right now, especially against the pass. The one team that might not be bad against a certain position is Atlanta against running backs. They're not that bad. They're not struggling that much. I would say kind of average maybe, but Michael Carter, like Trey McBride's obviously not a question. Michael Wilson. All right, real quick, where are you going to rank Wilson if Harrison plays?
I'll probably put him around 27, 28, so mid-tier number 3 receiver. It's just, you have to hope at some point when Harrison plays, like we still can get 7 or 8 targets if they throw the ball as much as they have.
Yeah.
For Wilson, it just has not been consistent. And so I'm just thinking about the teams where I have him. I only have 2 teams where I have both Harrison and Wilson, and I will start Harrison over Wilson. In the leagues where I have Wilson, like I have one league where I start four wide receivers. He's still going to be a starter. I don't have enough good players to start over him. Like Estime would be somebody I would consider over Wilson if Harrison plays.
Yeah, I have
Emmanuel Wilson if Josh Jacobs.
That's what. Yes, I would probably bench him for Emmanuel Wilson. I have Michael Wilson, Michael Carter, Emmanuel Wilson, Rico Dowdle, Tedero McMillan. I have to choose one of those guys. He will not be the one if
he probably go Dowdle.
Dowdle over Emmanuel Wilson.
It feels like the same type of guy. 18 carries, a couple catches.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Michael Carter. And how confident are you in him against Atlanta?
I mean, I'm moderately confident, but I started the week with him as like a top 20-ish caliber running back, and I've sort of sliding scale for a couple of reasons. One is Michael Carter, but he does have 2 games this season with double digits in carries. In both of those, he scored 12 plus PPR points. So I think that's something you can say is a range for him. I would probably say if I was projecting, it'd be like 10.5 to 11 PPR points as the start. Can he score? We'll see if he has that role. Amari DiMercado's a week removed from coming back after a couple of games off. Will he get more of a role also? So I just don't think it's safe. But again, we're talking about a 3rd or 4th string running back, depending on how he started the season for a reason. They're in desperate times at this point. Is Paris Johnson playing? Have we figured that out yet?
I don't know.
Yeah. Not that mattered for the passing game last week or even for Michael Carter. But this defense is good. It's not great against the run. I just don't think like when you start to put Michael Carter up against some of these guys who have been struggling, Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins, Ashton Genty, there's easily an argument to be made for him over those guys. But it could also go the other direction if, in fact, he does not get the passing downs work or loses any touchdown opportunities, which you could see happening given how the Cardinals have used their backfield the majority of the time since Trey Benson's injury.
Even if he doesn't get the passing downs work, you look at Bam Knight. Bam Knight was getting 3-4 catches, right? So that's what encourages me.
Right, they'll throw on first, second down to the running backs.
Yeah, they throw to the running backs all the time. Now, that might change with Harrison, Wilson, and McBride. It's possible. Yeah, he's risky, but I think, who am I going to start him over? I dropped Tony Pollard for him.
I would start him over Pollard.
I don't know if anybody cares about this, but I think I'm going to start him. I think I'm going to start him over Hampton. If Quinnen Williams plays, I'm going to start Michael Carter over Hampton.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. And I'm lying because I'm actually sitting both of them for Rico Dowdle and RJ Harvey. And that's it for that game. But I would start him over Hampton. All right. Jets are at New Orleans. Breece Hall, Michael Carter.
Right now it's Breece Hall, but I originally started the week with Carter over Hall.
Yeah, I think I would go Carter. I just don't know what to make of this Isaiah Davis stuff last week. They used Davis so much, and they used him throughout the game. It wasn't garbage time. And the fact that they're going with Brady Cook over a veteran quarterback, Brees Hall's a free agent, right? I mean, are they kind of showcase? Are they trying to see what they have in Isaiah Davis? I don't know. It's on the back of my mind. He's obviously not a great start. The only great start in this game would be Olave. Is that fair?
I think the only safe start. I don't know about great start because the great start could be the backfield for the Saints. Like it's just so. I mean, imagine if we had Kamara playing all this time. Like we'd be begging for this. And if Devin Neal had not gotten hurt, like he'd be awesome. And so if there was, okay, it's Audric Estime, it's Evan Hull. They're going to be the guy. Like you can't get better. Like just listen to what's happened to them in their last 5 games, 5 weeks. 7 running backs, 13 and a half PPR points or more with 14 total touchdowns.
Oh, wow.
Like it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So, Estime played a little bit more than Hull after Devin Neal's injury. He certainly played more in the passing game, 3 catches, 39 yards on 3 targets. Like this could be the type of guy we just had with Colby Parkinson. Take that into account, replacement guy or, not prominent player on offense with great matchup. And there's questions again. We could be sitting here, estimate, and it's Evan Hull, and he gets the big game here. But I think I counted yesterday. I picked Estime up in like 12 of my 18 remaining playoffs, and I may start him in all 12. Like some of it was just I don't want to give anybody the chance to play him, but this could be one of these. Hey, you remember that Audric Estime game? Like the Jets are so bad since they've got rid of Quillen Williams. They're so bad. That's the time frame. It's 5 games. So I wish, there was some clarity, like Kellen Moore comes out and says Estime will be our guy, and, Evan Hull mixing in. One of the beat writers says that. I've been, if I tell you 4 or 5 times a day, I'm searching Saints reporters for something, some semblance of something. But you look at what their backfield is right now. It's Estime, it's a Hull. They signed Nyheim Hines, and Taysom Hill is going to be potentially a factor too. So it's definitely risky, absolutely risky.
Would you start Adonai Mitchell or Audric Estime?
I start Estime.
Would you start Brees Hall or Estime?
I'll say this. Somebody from the Saints backfield is going to have a big game.
Yeah. Hope it's not Taysom Hill. Would you start Mitchell or Brees Hall?
I'd start Hall over Mitchell.
And Hall over Estime?
As of 10:08 a.m. on Friday, December 19th, it would be Brees Hall over Estime. And I'll say this, have both in our podcast league. I share the team with Todd Rones, who's one of our more generous donors for our St. Jude Draftathon. And he said, is it even a question? And I said, for which guy? And he goes, Estime. So and Todd's a pretty smart fantasy guy. He's in our final 3 for our K-Team league. It could be a huge game. Absolutely huge game.
Juwan Johnson's tricky because I think it'd be easy to get away from him, but no Devon Vele. What does that mean for him? Did we get more targets? Finally, he's got 2 straight games with 4 targets. He had 9, 7 before that. You guys have him outside the top 12. Would you go Juwan or Theo?
Juwan
or Loveland?
Loveland.
Juwan or Waller?
Right now it's Waller.
Juwan Johnson or I think it was pretty much those are Jake Ferguson.
Juwan Johnson. The problem with Juwan Johnson is just he doesn't score touchdowns. And so, I think like a great game for him at times has been 10 to 11 PPR points. Like I could see 5 for 56 type game.
Okay, last one. Fannin or Juwan?
Fannin.
Saints DST or Chargers DST?
Saints DST. I mean, Brady Cook has been a turnover machine, and their offensive line has not been great. So we can see some sacks here. It's risky, but you're playing the matchup, and hopefully it's a productive one, successful one.
Saints or Vikings?
Saints.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
That's kind of been like my my waiver wire this week was, can I get the Saints? No. Okay. If I can't get the Saints, I've gone to the Vikings.
Oh, Saints or Eagles?
Eagles.
Thanks for watching. It's been a marathon. I think this is the longest show we've ever done. During the season. So great stuff. All right. You're a very loyal audience, and we appreciate it. We will talk to you with the mailbag. The mailbag will not be an hour and a half. See you later.